Right. Welcome back. Today we're doing The Boys season 5, 1 and 2 review. Let's go. So let's see about this pop team. Let's see.
Every day I'm shocked that Sage is still doing it. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. I know that Sister Sage is doing this out of sheer curiosity, but it gets to a point where it's like, why? At this point, it seems like more trouble than it's been worth. I feel like an even bigger challenge now for Sister Sage would be if she could undo it all. But maybe she's lazy, I don't know. I do love all her scenes with Ashley, and I suspect maybe they will team together by the end of this season. The running joke that Sister Sage loves Taco Bell will always get to me. Since Chipotle came out, people forgot where they came from. Taco Bell is always there for us in the clutch, and Sister Sage remembers that because she's the smartest person in the world. Such a great character study on Homelander and his mindset. He will never be happy. He's deeply unsatisfied and depressed. Just seeing his reaction to having just an ounce of negative press highlights that he is on the brink of breaking even more than he has. And what I found interesting specifically about this moment is that threat that Homelander had to Starlight a couple seasons back, where he was like, listen, I like to be loved, but I have no problem being feared. Clearly wants to be loved. Like, he doesn't want to be feared. And that's why he was talking to A-Train's body like that. Sure is definitely becoming the second big bad. I know that change actually happened in the finale when he killed Newman. But something about this virus seems especially cruel, especially since their first test subjects were teens. I do get it though. They're desperate and it's getting to a point. Biological warfare is such nasty work. This is untested. Yeah, right now it seems like humans won't be affected. We don't know what this will morph into and how it will affect the greater population. We don't know if it'll wipe out all soups.
Yeah, let's see these guys' reviews. I've
He
never
definitely
checked them
a
out
soldier
before, so
taker
let's
for
see.
sure.
This right here, man,
Crazy, bro.
crazy 2 episodes. We got 2 hours of some good television.
Yeah.
This season is definitely ramping up in a way where they bringing out all the stops. They said we
Yeah,
we
bro. They
we
about to go
just about to
crazy.
give y'all everything. They're going 1,000 miles an hour, and I fucking love it, bro. This
Yeah.
is I definitely love.
Yeah, let's try this out. Yeah, I think this one might be good.
Ladies, gentlemen, fellow boys out there, Boba Bloody Butcher back here again. Welcome to my review and breakdown for The Boys Season 5, Episodes 1 and 2. And wow, that was quite a lot. I kind of forget sometimes how long episodes of The Boys are, and I'm kind of glad that we didn't get episode 3 as well, because, well, for one, I actually do prefer a weekly release, but just after watching 2 hours, over 2 hours of season 5 just to get tucked into this review, I just feel like there would have been way too much to cram into a single video here. So let me know actually if you prefer a binge or a weekly release, you know, a little bit of weekly speculation and whatnot. But yes, The Boys is back, and it's back one last time, one last season, and it is kind of crazy to me as well to think that season 4 aired in June of 2024, and now almost 2 years later, well, this is it. They're going full on scorched earth, and these first 2 episodes felt like a good setup for where the characters are at now after almost a year of time passing by. Things have certainly changed for various characters, putting them into much different positions this year. However, some like Billy Bloody Butcher are still staying course, and if anything, more bloody diabolical. Let's dig into these first 2 episodes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them and any theories that you guys have down in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you do enjoy it, and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. So, to begin with here, I feel like episode 1 launched us into the season quite well, giving us Homelander hosting the VOT International Shareholders Meeting, I think it was called, with everyone loving what he has to say. Like, you just see him reveling in the power of talking all about VOT's wins. And I mean, what was that movie he said? Something like G-Men Days Past from Future getting $2 billion in the box office or something. You gotta love the references the boys tries to include every now and again. But all of this was turned on its head, and Homelander was completely humiliated in front of them by Starlight, who managed to sneak her way in. And after a battle with the new Black Noir, she forced the Flight 37 video on screen. Something that, if you think about it, has been brewing and has been threatened for a very long time now to just kind of be squashed just like that. Because I guess you could say one of the social commentaries in this episode after the fallout of this moment on whether that
Yeah, I'm glad the video got released. I mean, it was overdue. They've been hinting at that video from season 1, so I'm glad it's released.
be the news or with Firecracker and Sage doing damage control was just surrounding how this was all blamed on AI. And well, there's a commentary on that in of itself with how they re-edited the footage to put 7 fingers on Homelander, and it's like, hey, can you really trust what you see kind of thing? But also, the very aspect of how people can be seeing something real and choose to turn a blind eye despite very real and scary things being presented to them in a clear as day setting, which, then I suppose sows contention on both sides of the fence with the discourse and debate surrounding the validity of said thing that was presented. And as usual with Homelander in these first 2 episodes, despite everything he's managed to do so far, such as having the president effectively working for him, like he still doesn't have that one thing that he desires above all, and that is people's love, respect, undying adoration. Despite having quite a lot of supporters, that there's still a lot of people out there who he knows are Starlighters in their hearts, and this is where he turns up the dial even more in that conversation with Sage about turning more people over to the camps who were perhaps maybe just once previously Starlighters, or anyone who has circulated a meme about him to be labeled as freaking cyber terrorists. So that this is where things are just getting more and more and more and more out of control. I think it goes without saying, by the way, that Anthony Starr is still just as fantastic as ever in this role. I know we've probably barely seen anything compared to what we will see with him later this season, but man, already just in these first 2 episodes, several scenes just come to mind where it's just like, this guy has been playing a diabolical, crazy, unhinged villain so well for so many years. And I really look forward to seeing what crazy, unhinged mess he presents to us in episodes ahead. Because, I mean, my God, last season got pretty disturbing. What is going to happen in the final season? And yet, there's others who absolutely won't let him stay like that, which is where we visit Huey and Frenchie and MM, who have been at one of Homelander's camps for almost a year. And it's interesting to see where they're all at, just with regards to the positions they're all in. We have Frenchie, who's, despite dealing, certain packages, shall we say, he's clean. Whereas MM has lost hope, whereas he's usually quite the optimist, and now he's taken to drinking. We have Huey, out of all of the boys, who has come into the position of being a leader. Like, don't get me wrong, Butcher is still, especially as we get into episode 2, kind of forcing this leadership role, but he's kind of at odds with Huey, who, especially in this first episode, is kind of, driving things forward for the plan to get out of there. Now, when we see Butcher, after a brief stop where he seems to have killed his father, which I think is the show's way of being like, well, okay, he could have done this before when we've seen scenes of them together before. But now, his mum's not there, and he is where he is. Like, this version of him, maybe that there's a shred of him left, which I think is going to be a safety, as much as you wouldn't allow him to do what he did. But this episode, yeah, the gloves are off. So he goes to then get Kimiko and Annie. Speaking of, Kimiko can talk now after speech therapy, and that is going to take some getting used to. Annie asks A-Train for help, which, you know, again, a year later, a whole different vibe here. But understandably, after his journey so far, what he's been through, what his family have been through, he doesn't want to compromise their safety. As much as, you know, you can tell that he wants to help out, that there is this terror just built into those who served Homelander in that of the Seven. You know, the exact same thing can be said for what we see next, where he shared a scene with the Deep. And all the scene really does is just reinforce exactly what we're talking about here, how characters like the Deep are only serving out of sheer fear. And I'm really interested to see how things pan out for his character in particular. I can't actually imagine the Deep doing the right thing, but also Homelander just lasering him just feels as though it would be too straightforward, even though he's been on the precipice of doing so 1,000 times before. So if you have any ideas, let me know. We also can't forget how Butcher went to get the worm in order to break into the camp. And Mark,
pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Even when he pulled his pants down, I was like, yeah.
Gold, was that certainly a sight to behold as he burrows into the dirt, eating it, and then it goes on to, well, you know, send it flying out the other side. This is exactly the kind of wackiness the boys loves to serve us, which, you know, I do look forward to seeing what they can somehow pull off next, even if it is as weird as this. Now, this is where we do get our first moment between Butcher and Homelander this season, and he reveals that he knows all about the Godolphin virus. Luckily, Annie causes a light storm outside, which kind of works as a flashbang. And I have to say, you know, I could gush over this for ages, but I loved seeing the reunion of Kimiko and French, even if they are just freaking kissing in the middle of bullets flying everywhere. I feel like these two just do such a good job at portraying these characters and their love for each other. I just love their wholesomeness, and it is kind of weird in one way how, like, they found it weird at one point, but now they're just going full send into it in the final season. But I think, obviously, being apart from one another, narratively, that makes sense as well. It makes you realize how much you did love this person, even in a romantic sense. And I think it does click so well. Now, amongst all this chaos, Butcher goes after Cindy. I think that's her name, the body popping person. MM goes after
season 1 or 2. But I'm like that it kind of came full circles. Love Sausage too. Hero Gasm now comes back full circles.
Dick Man and getting sweet revenge there. And right as Homelander gets to Huey and he's about to heat vision him, this is where time slows down. And while this was a pretty convenient moment, I will say that it really does make sense for the character of A-Train and what made the ending of episode 1 a really just overall enjoyable episode, and yet sad ending to see, but a satisfying one at the same time, given
A-Train's ending was poetic, as he said. Just you were introduced to the boys with A-Train season 1, and now the final season, episode 1, you lose A-Train. It's pretty intense. I mean, good writing.
That character's journey throughout all of these seasons. So, you know, we got to see that cool sequence with A-Train, of him arriving, and to be honest, if it wasn't for him, man, they would all be cooked. I'm actually still kind of surprised that they went in there without a different or a better plan B, because, you know, Annie flying them out just would have taken way too long. With Homelander recovering after being flashbanged by her powers, you know, they would have been cooked, right? But to be fair, I don't know what other options they have, because they did have a ticking clock until Homelander's leak of, you know, killing Huey and the boys, so they didn't really have too many other choices, even if it was a blatant trap. But just as Homelander was about to laser Huey, we have Billy web-slinging one of his tendrils out. You know, A-Train saves his life, and they're all run out by A-Train right outside the front entrance of the camp. Now, just as I was thinking, because again, I can't help this side, and obviously this is a review, you know, I'm not just going to praise what I like, but I try, you know, I see things where I'm like, you know, could that have made better sense in the writing? And in this moment, I was just about to critique when watching it, or writing my notes, how Homelander just kind of stands and stares at A-Train, and then all just outside the camp, right at the front entrance, and we see how fast Homelander can fly and scan with his sight, right? And he would be there in seconds. We know how freaking desperate he is to get at Starlight, right? She's like the avatar of his opposition that he just wants to crush. And I was kind of like, damn. He could just arrive, and sure, he'd encounter a bit of a fight from the boys, but Frenchie, and Huey at least would have been lasered within seconds. But honestly, as soon as we cut to that scene of A-Train fleeing for his life as Homelander just tries to laser him, I do think that Homelander is the type of character to easily be salty and impulsive enough to drop everything else to go after someone, even if he, as we've already mentioned here, is desperate to go after Star.
No, I think A-Train became the big bad, the main priority for Homelander. I think that scene made sense. I think that made complete sense.
Who was just seconds away from him outside the front entrance. I think what makes this more believable is when we have Homelander talking to the coffin in episode 2, and all of this just playing into how Homelander feels as though nobody likes him. You know, why do people keep leaving me? So this very quickly turned into something for me that made so much sense, because Homelander can't stand that level of betrayal. Now, the ending of this
A-Train hurt Homelander, but the thing with Homelander, he likes people that stand up to him. Like, he could have taken care of Butcher a long time, Huey, Starlight, all the boys, but he likes people that stands up to him. It makes his life a bit more interesting, right? I think he wants love, but he doesn't want blind obedience or blind love, just loving him out of obligation. So he's an interesting character, to be honest, very complex.
Episode was just fantastic, and I felt like it was a brilliant way for the character to go out. Like, going from the A-Train running into Huey's ex-girlfriend Robin in season 1, episode 1, for now this A-Train to avoid hitting this woman here last second, just shows the change in his character in a decision that really ends up getting him killed, which is the kind of great thing about it, really. Like, A-Train, you know, perhaps could have lived if he just ran right on through her, but he couldn't compromise that part of himself any longer after the years of serving Homelander and trading his soul away when doing so, which is when Homelander goes right up to him and he just laughs right into his face. Not only that, he calls him nothing, an empty suit, even calling him weak and pathetic, which kind of reminds me of whatever those lines were that Soulja Boy said to him that one time, which in turn gave Homelander such dissatisfaction and almost this unique horror to only Homelander. And I say unique horror, right, because it would be horrific to anyone else anyway, this situation, but only Homelander could really experience horror where he wants satisfaction in snapping someone's neck like this. That right there was a silver bullet to him, and it was a great way to mark the episode's ending with, despite the display of power we saw from Homelander in this moment, going after him, and him being at the very top of the mountain, you know, trapping the boys to come see him. Here he is, arguably powerless to get to this man, despite having his hands physically wrapped around his neck. And the person who I would say was arguably destroyed more in this moment wasn't A-Train, who died a hero's death. He wasn't undone by this, but was rather made, if you will, like over the character's full arc. It was rather Homelander who was undone in the best of ways, and that is, you know, that is the way I kind of want to see this man go down in this final season. Now, something I haven't mentioned so far is Ashley. I mean, how...
Yeah, I heard the theories of Homelander, pretty much the virus reducing him to a human. And I think that would be the perfect ending. I think that's interesting. I don't know if he dies. I think Billy Butcher dies. I'm not sure if Homelander dies. I guess he gets reduced to a human.
Crazy is it that she's the VP? Not that it's really so much a position of to boast about anymore, given that their puppet's being controlled, but holy, her powers, right? The Voldemort situation we have going on here with this
of bad power. I wish she got the Medusa.
psychic Ashley Mark II on the back of her head. You know, I think the reason why I bring this up now is because she's another character who the show has been teasing for quite a while alongside A-Train, that, you know, she might have some kind of turn. Like, she knows things are wrong. She's kind of like, in the way, like the Deep, very fearful of it. So she's running away and still serving, but way more so than the Deep. Ashley does have that side to her that I can see where she might do something. But now we have this little freaking Ashley Mort, Voldemort head thing on the back of her head.
Yeah, and she can read minds with that head too. It's crazy.
Trying to really encourage her, saying that she used to want to do some good in the world, and then we can still do some good. Or, you know, half of Washington thinks Homelander is bad shit, and the CIA, Pentagon will follow you if you lead them. Now, with this, I think she could have a turn at some point, but I don't know. I feel like they're trying to bait me here and trying to make me think that they are setting that up. But I think whatever move that she might make this season might end up with Homelander just zapping her. You know, I can't really imagine her making a move and surviving and making a proper difference, but you never know. Now, as we get into episode 2, now the team is back together. Butcher takes the boys back to his HQ, and it's business as usual with taking Homelander down and stopping his tyrannic reign. But it's just, you know, one way of going about it with the virus is just something that not everyone's going to agree on, given that it is contagious and could, in theory, kill every soup on the planet. The plot of this episode is really that the virus has got to the point where it's been developed where they think it could take out Homelander. But of course, you first need to test it out. And there's a soup named Rock Hard, I don't want to keep saying that, who is almost as strong in theory as Homelander, which makes him a good test subject. So for now, that's going to, you know, seemingly go along with it. But Huey is making it known that Butcher is very screwed up after what he's done. But this is where Annie says, you know, well, 10,000 soups across the world, right? Save 8 billion.
Yeah, Annie's losing it. She's more on the side of Butcher, you know.
Worldwide, that's kind of a good price /
even when she's saying Frenchie first over you. That was funny.
Exchange in any war. So speaking of Starlight here, this season she finds herself in a position where she's really struggling with what she's become in the past year, but like overall, right? Because there's things she's had to do in the past year, but it's also surrounding what she started with something that grew beyond her, the Starlight movement, the Starlighters, such as how there was a Starlight cell that was just raided and everyone died. You can only begin to imagine how that must weigh on her conscience, right? And I think this does put her character in a much more interesting place where she's, you know, conflicted on what the right path is. She's now, you know, kind of blurring the line a lot more now. Seeing Huey reminds her of how she used to be, which was, you know, a lot more in line with what the heck is Butcher doing, for example. But now she's making moves like, oh, maybe I should get other people out of this camp instead of Huey first. And, you know, that made him think, eh? Now, I think that scene later on in the episode between Frenchie and Starlight was great, where she speaks of, you know, leading others to a shallow grave and following them is the only thing that makes sense. For him to turn back to her and say, you know, you get up every day and you keep going. Anything else is an insult to the dead. And, you know, you mix Kimiko into this as well, and she's wanting to stay and still help, you know, given all of the innocent people we see in this episode who are now being rounded up because of Homelander's anti-meme arrests. Like, everyone is basically being tossed into a camp. But before I get too ahead of myself, we have Homelander bring back Soldier Boy. Now, we all knew this was going to happen from the trailers, and, you know, from Sage to everyone and their freaking grandmother knows that Homelander really did it out of, once again, another odd attempt at, oh, here's another shot maybe at someone kind of caring about me despite him, you know, wanting to maybe kind of kill me and stuff and disown me. Soldier Boy really couldn't give a crap about Homelander other than the ways that he can maybe help get him back into the groove in the world. You know, so he's in a bit of a unique position there where he does hear Homelander out because of the narrative about Soldier Boy out there. So he kind of does need him despite what happened between them. For now, he is sent after Butcher but fails to inform him about the frickin' virus. But amongst all of this, you can still see that this is something that weighs on the minds of the boys, because despite this mountain soup being who he is, they're still doing something pretty damn horrific to him, if you think about it, and they're going along with Butcher's plan. But we do see another crack here with how for example, lets Countess Crow slip away, which I'm not sure if that's something that's going to pop up later on this season, but it goes to show that, you know, what's the point of doing that if you're going to just release a virus that will kill everyone anyway. So I just don't see them letting Butcher crack on with this. But without the virus at the same time, how do you really defeat Homelander? And, you know, would Soldier Boy really assist in that? I don't know.
No,
now, after being chased by the TikTok sponsor soups, I don't know what else to call them, Kimiko and Huey make it back and the virus is released and it looks like it's actually working. I mean, it does work on the TikTok soup guy and at first with Soldier Boy. But as we see at the very end of episode 2, Homelander arrives very, very upset and the episode cuts off with Soldier Boy getting up. So the virus is not strong enough to take out Soldier.
No, I think they're doing the zombie arc from the comics. There are a lot of people. It was in the G Squad where a lot of people became like zombies.
Boy, and so it will not be strong enough to take out Homelander. So the question I now have is, can they make the virus strong enough to take out Homelander and Soldier Boy after this? Or, you know, will Soldier Boy, for example, overcoming this weaker version of the virus allow him to become immune to something even stronger? Like, even if they cooked up something more stronger, would it even work now? And then I just factor in other things from the trailer for this season, where it's revealed that Soldier Boy and Homelander are going after the original Compound V, and if he gets a hold of that, he'll become even stronger. Are they doing that to, you know, maybe counteract the virus that is maybe going to be stepped up a notch? I really like at this point how much of the season I don't really know about. Just in terms of truly the direction of where they could go. I do know that from some reviews out there, from people who saw up to episode 7 right before the finale, that some things are kind of being roughly reviewed, such as, okay, Ryan was a thing that people were talking about, like, because in the reviews consistently, it feels like Ryan's story wasn't so leaned into. And that's something, obviously, I can't speak to. I mean, well, we can kind of speak to the first 2 episodes, and he's not in it. They just said that he's at, like, a boarding school or something, but that was just the front, so clearly they're keeping Ryan somewhere. And I think those are the scenes in the trailer that we saw where he's taking some of them out and he wants to escape. But maybe they really have sidelined him and he's not going to remotely be as big of a secret weapon or whatever theories people have had out there as what maybe we thought he could be, which I do
No, I think Ryan's gonna play a big part in this season.
think would be really disappointing. I'm not saying that out of just, oh, we had these theories, they're not what we thought would happen, so now it's bad. No, but like, if he is as sidelined as what some people are saying, then I just think, you know, they should have done something with his character more so than only showing him barely in this season from what we're hearing. But also, you know, I'm wondering about Soldier Boy. Like, isn't he going to be pretty pissed knowing that Homelander sent him there, knowing that the virus was something he could face? But maybe not, because again, we do see scenes in the trailer of Soldier Boy still rocking with Homelander. Maybe he still feels forced to, because he'll be able to help that narrative of him out there, so he feels forced to partner up with him. But do you think it's possible that Soldier Boy could take the opportunity to take out Homelander if he could, with Butcher and everything like that? But then I feel like we're just kind of taking
I think Butcher is the new bad for this season. It's gonna end with Butcher now.
a few steps back to a familiar storyline between Butcher and Soldier Boy and the boys taking out Homelander. So I really, really love how...
Plus, I don't think Soldier Boy will be the focus of this season. Just with like the kids from Gen V, they already have their shows. Like Soldier Boy has a spin-off coming up, and which is Vault Rising, and then so Soldier Boy has a spin-off coming up, Gen V has season 3, so the universe will continue. As the creator said, the screenwriter said. So I think it's just gonna be down to the boys. They have to finish out their arc. Soldier Boy will probably be a sideline character. I think by episode 5 he won't be relevant. I think the last 3 episodes, 6, 7, 8, will all be about the boys and the 7.
We don't know where truly this is going to go. And, you know, you can look at the comic books, but adaptations do not copy and paste. So there are certainly new ways they can go about doing this in the show. And, you know, I think one thing that I would really like to see is kind of going back to what A-Train said. I don't know if this is foreshadowing for what they could do, but, you know, without the powers, what are you, you know? And I think it would be so good. It would be so good if Homelander's powers got taken away and his suit was off, right? And you just see this like man being like, I don't know, trying to punch Butcher or something and he breaks his hand. I think that would be so satisfying. And then you do whatever the hell you do to him. But overall, guys, season 5, episode 1 and 2, I'm sure I've missed out a few details here in my rambly review and break.
Yeah, that was a good review though, guys. Subscribe. Off. Good catching up with you guys. Please subscribe. All right, see you.